Slaughtered by aristocracy. Today I will be covering the brutal murder of Sandra Rivett and the disappearance of Lord Lucan. Who was Sandra Rivett? The third child of Albert and Eunice Hensby, Sandra was born on the 16th of September 1945 in the UK, and her family moved to Australia when she was just 2. Sandra Rivett spent the first 8 years of her life in Australia before returning to the UK, where her family settled down in Croydon in South London. Sandra was a popular child, described at school as intelligent, although she does not exactly excel academically. Sandra worked for 6 months as an apprentice hairdresser before taking a job as a secretary in Croydon. Following a failed romance, Sandra became a voluntary patient at a mental hospital near Redhill, Surrey, where she was treated for depression. She became engaged to a builder named John and took a job as a children's nanny for a doctor in Croydon. On March 13, 1964, Sandra gave birth to a boy named Stephen, but as her relationship with John was failing, she returned home to live with her parents and considered giving the baby up for adoption. Her parents took on the responsibility and adopted him in May 1965. Sandra later worked at an old people's home before moving to Portsmouth to stay with her elderly sister. While there, she met Roger Rivett. The two married on June 10, 1967 in Croydon. Roger was serving as a Royal Navy able seaman and later worked as a loader for British Road Services, while Sandra worked part-time at Reedham Orphanage in Purley. In summer 1973, he took a job on an Esso tanker, returning to their flat in Kenley a few months later, by which time Sandra was employed by a cigarette company in Croydon. Their marriage collapsed in May 1974 when, suspicious of Sandra's movements while he was away, Roger went to live with his parents. When Sandra divorced in May 1974, she was listed on the books of a Belgravia domestic agency and had been caring for an elderly couple in that district. Sandra began working for Lord and Lady Lucan as a nanny, caring for their 3 children in late 1974 at the family home in Belgravia. Sandra had been nanny to the Lucans' children for only 10 weeks. Sandra normally went out with her boyfriend John Hankins on Thursday nights, but had decided to change her night off, seeing him the previous day instead. They last spoke on the telephone at 8 p.m. on the 7th of November. After putting the younger children to bed at 8:55 p.m, Sandra asked Lady Lucan if she would like a cup of tea, before heading downstairs to the basement kitchen to make one. As Sandra entered the room, she was bludgeoned to death with a piece of bandaged lead pipe. Her killer then placed her body into a canvas mail sack. Wondering what had delayed her nanny, Lady Lucan descended from the first floor to see what had happened. Calling to Rivett from the top of the basement stairs, Anne was herself attacked. As Lady Lucan screamed for her life, her attacker told her to shut up. Lady Lucan later claimed at that moment to have recognised her husband's voice. The two are said to have continued to fight, with Lady Lucan biting his fingers, and when he threw her face down on the carpet, managed to turn around and squeeze his testicles, causing him to release his grip on her throat and give up the fight. When Lady Lucan asked where Sandra was, Lucan was initially evasive, but admitted to killing her. Lady Lucan told him she could help him escape if only he would remain at the house for a few days to allow her injuries to heal. Lucan walked upstairs and sent his daughter to bed, then went into one of the bedrooms. When Lady Lucan entered to lie on the bed, Lord Lucan told her to put towels down first to avoid staining the bedding. Lord Lucan then asked her if she had any barbiturates and went to the bathroom to get a wet towel, supposedly to clean her face. Lady Lucan realised her husband would be unable to hear her from the bedroom and made an escape, running outside to a nearby public house, the Plumber's Arms, where she raised the alarm. It is believed that Lord Lucan called at the Chester Square home of Madeline Floorman, mother of one of Francis's school friends. sometime between 10 and 10:30 p.m. Alone in the house, Floorman ignored the door, but shortly afterwards she received an incoherent telephone call and put the receiver down. Blood stains discovered on the doorsteps were found to be a mixture of blood groups A and B. Lucan called his mother between 10:30 and 11 p.m. and asked her to collect the children from Lower Belgrave Street. According to the Dowager Countess, he spoke of a terrible catastrophe at his wife's home. Lord Lucan told his mother that he had been driving past the house when he saw Lady Lucan fighting with a man in the basement. He had entered the property and found his wife screaming. The location from which he made this, and possibly the call to Floorman, remains unknown. The police forced their way into Lady Lucan's home and discovered Sandra Rivett's body before his wife was taken by ambulance to St. George's Hospital. Lucan drove the Ford Corsair 42 miles to Uckfield in East Sussex to visit his friends, the Maxwell Scotts. Susan Maxwell Scott's meeting with Lucan was his last confirmed sighting. Lucan's car, blood-stained and with a length of lead piping almost identical to the alleged murder weapon inside, was later found abandoned at the port of Newhaven on the English south coast. Lucan has never been seen since. Scotland Yard named Lord Lucan as the prime suspect for the murder. Who was Lord Lucan? Lord Richard John Bingham became the 7th Earl of Lucan on the death of his father in 1964. Known as Lord Lucan or Lucky, you could be forgiven for describing him as the perfect gentleman. Lord Lucan was 6'2", handsome, impeccably dressed, Eton-educated, and having completed his national service as the 2nd Lieutenant in the Coldstream Guards between 1953 and 1955. On leaving the army in 1954, Lord Lucan joined William Brandt's Sons and Co., a London-based merchant bank, on an annual salary of £500. Enjoying the ultimate playboy lifestyle, Lord Lucan was a keen gambler and a regular at the casinos of Devol and Monte Carlo, and at the tables of his London clubs. Skilled at backgammon and bridge, Lord Lucan was an early member of the Claremont Club. He often won at games of skill like backgammon and bridge, but he also accumulated huge losses. Lord Lucan left Brandt's around 1960, shortly after he had won £26,000 playing chemin de fer. A colleague had been promoted before him, leading Lord Lucan to leave his job in protest, saying, "Why should I work in a bank when I can earn a year's money in one single night at the tables?" Lord Lucan met his future wife, Veronica Duncan, at a London golf event in early 1963. By November of the same year they were married. Unfortunately, their marriage faced serious pressure right from the beginning. Lord Lucan had developed a serious gambling problem, losing a significant portion of the family's money and plunging himself into debt. Lady Lucan suffered from severe depression after giving birth to each of their 3 children. She suffered from postpartum depression, which was treated with various antidepressants that compromised her mental health over the following years. Unfortunately, Lady Lucan was found dead, aged 80, when police broke into the very same Belgravia family home her husband vanished from in 2017 after a friend said that she had not been seen for 3 days. An inquest ruled that Veronica was found to have killed herself with a cocktail of drink and drugs after wrongfully self-diagnosing with Parkinson's disease. She had spent her final years as a recluse, having not spoken to her sister or her 3 children, George, Francis and Camilla, since the 1980s. She left her fortune to charity. Since his disappearance, there has been much speculation as to what happened to Lord Lucan, with dozens of unverified sightings reported. Lord Lucan was initially suspected of committing suicide in 1974, but reports claimed he could have been alive as recently as 2002. After nothing was heard from him for decades, he was declared legally dead in 1999. An official death certificate was released following a court ruling in 2016, allowing his son, Lord Bingham, to assume his title. If you enjoyed this true crime documentary and you want to hear more stories like this one, then please do subscribe to the channel. It really does mean the world to me. Please hit that like button and leave me a comment below with your thoughts on this case. Until next time, take care, friends.